What's up, guys? Welcome back to Ride JBI. I'm JB. Today we finished another 2024 Kawasaki KX Motocross Spec JBI suspension revalve. This bike's gonna be ridden in the Illinois area at tracks such as Lincoln Trail, Motorsports Park, and also Sweeney MX track. In this video, we're gonna break down what we did, why we did it, and what this rider should expect when he gets back his JBI spec suspension. The 2024 Kawasaki KX450 features the second generation Showa 49mm forks in reference to the first generation Showa forks that came on the 2019 Kawasaki and stayed on that bike until 2023. If you're interested in the exact changes that took place, please check out one of our past videos where we detail the differences between the 19 and 23 Showa forks and the 2024 and now 25 Showa forks. Now we're going to break down what we did to these forks and why. At the very top, I have what's called our JBI subvalve. That is this piece in red right here. That is an item that we use to improve the comfort and plushness of the forks. So when this rider goes over small and medium-sized bumps, it'll be much more comfortable for him to do that as he rides. The reason for that is our red subvalve flows a lot more oil than the stock one does. And that allows us to utilize a valving setting where the subvalve is no longer the bottleneck where it is in the OEM setup. And also the subvalve ensures that the fork always has the proper amount of holdup during fast and aggressive riding. In the middle section of the fork, we added what's called our JBI Titanium Pro Perch. This gives the forks really good bottoming the last few inches of travel. So what I mean by that is as the fork compresses down through its travel, at some point, the spring perch is going to engage the oil in the outer chamber of the forks. And when it does, that's going to help slow the fork down. Now, depending upon the design of the spring perch, it'll dictate how effective it is at slowing the fork down. So a simple way to put it is the more effective your spring perch is, the more effective your bottoming control is going to be. So the last 3 inches or so is when that item is going to kick in and really give you good bottoming resistance. So that way you don't have a very harsh metal to metal bottom out. Also paired with our Titanium Pro Perch is our JBI volume spacer. It allows us to tune the progressiveness of the fork by modifying the internal air volume. You can also do that with oil as well. And sometimes we do. Other times we don't want to add oil to the fork. And instead we only want to manipulate the air volume in the fork. So the volume spacer allows us to do just that. Now that we've covered that, in the midsection of the fork, we installed what's called our JBI Titanium Leaf Spring mid-valve configuration. What I mean by that is that updates the mid-valve section of the fork to what we call a leaf spring style mid-valve. This is what you would find on the 2022 Kawasaki KX450 SR, which came with the KYB suspension that people often rave about. Now that same KYB suspension is also featured on the Yamaha YZFs, which is well known for very good stock suspension settings and also for suspension that responds really well to modifications as well. So at Ride JBI, we take note of similar forks, such as the KYB twin chamber fork, and we notice, hey, we got a twin chamber fork here, but it doesn't have that same component. So let's add that component into this fork so that way we can utilize the same advantages of that. The reason we utilize the titanium leaf spring in the mid valve is it ensures that the forks ride tall and high in the travel as you ride. So that way the fork stays up in its stroke during fast and aggressive riding. What's happening is we're modifying different areas of the fork to achieve different, let's say, characteristics of the fork, meaning we modify parts of it to improve the plushness, we modify other parts to improve the holdup, and then other items of the fork get modified to improve the bottoming resistance. So think of it as a very comprehensive and holistic approach to modifying this fork and making it better overall. Now we're going to transition and break down what we did to the rear shock. To the right of me, I have the matching JBI Motocross spec Showa rear shock that we built to match the front forks. Starting at the bottom, we have our JBI black bumper. That is this item right here. It replaces the OEM bumper. The most notable feature is the black color compared to the usual kind of ugly yellow color that they are. Now, beyond that aesthetic, the key takeaway is our bumpers are made out of the same PUR foam material, but there's a small additive of NBR rubber that gives the bumper that black color. It also seals it, so it makes it less susceptible to absorbing moisture and also gives it better UV protection against sunlight. So what this means is the bumper is not going to get dry and hard nearly as quickly as the OEM bumper. And they're even cheaper than the OEM bumper. So overall, it's a win-win. The powder coated metallic purple spring. This is a custom coating job we did for this customer that was requested by them. I love the darkness of the color. It's really deep, and I think it really is going to stand well with the rest of the bike. Paired with that is the extra preload adjuster to make adjustment on this preload spring very easy and efficient. I'm sure the majority of you are aware of these, and they're a very popular item that we commonly sell. If you're somebody that likes adjusting your preload often and or checking it, then these are worth their weight in gold. So now let's talk about some of the valving mods that we did to the shock. In this section of the shock right here is let's call it the shock main piston. And that is where the majority of our valving mods take place. So that's where we modify the internal valving or the stock valving to our JBI Motocross spec. During that time, we also go ahead and we install our JBI bladder cap. That is this black piece right here. And I got example one laid out right here. There's two reasons for this. The first main reason is that it removes the OEM bladder cap, which does not have a Schrader style fill on it. By that mean is when you add pressure to your tires on your bike, you are using what's called a Schrader valve. It's a very common valve, very easy to use. And there's something that used to always come on all shock absorbers on the bladder cap, but as in the past couple of years, manufacturers started going away from it to a bladder cap that had a rubber plug instead. And those do work, but they don't tend to be as reliable due to you having to pierce the rubber plug every time you either want to inflate the bladder with nitrogen or maybe release the bladder of nitrogen in order to service a shock. So we understand they do work, but they're not nearly as reliable or service friendly as a bladder cap with a Schrader valve. Now, in the top area of the shock is our compression adjuster. So on the outside, meaning what faces you and what you interact with, is still the stock compression adjuster housing. Now behind that is another piston with shims and valving behind it. And that is commonly overlooked as an area that can be revalved and modified as well. To the right of me, I have our gold JBI titanium compression adjuster piston. It is rather similar to the OEM one. However, there are some unique changes that are similar to what you'd find in a kit Showa shock. So what you can see what we're doing is, again, we're taking note of what works well in other shocks, and then we're applying it to shocks that don't feature the same item. So to summarize what we did, we revalved the main piston, revalved the compression adjuster mechanism as well. We paired that with our bladder cap and our JBI bumper. So again, think of this as a very holistic and comprehensive revalve on the shock. Again, this was revalved to our JBI Motocross spec, but we've also tested, tuned, and developed many other settings for all the various types of off-road riding, supercross, arena cross, and also freestyle motocross as well. If you'd like to get your suspension done by Ride JBI, please give us a call or send us an email. We'll discuss the year, make, model bike that you have, which options are available, and based on that, we'll advise what setup would be most advantageous for you.